Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you to the webinar on securing digital payments in the age of emerging technologies. This webinar is organized by Exhibitions India Group and presented by FinTech India Expo. Now we have with us a very experienced speaker to share their thoughts and insight on this important topic. We have Mr. Nitin Bhatnagar. He is Associate Director heading India chapter with PCI Securities Standard Council. Mr. Bharat Panchal is a Chief Risk Officer for India, Middle East and Africa with FIS Global. Dr. Bal Singh Rajput is Superintendent of Police Cyber in Maharashtra. Mr. Rahul Tyagi is a co-founder with Lucidius. Mr. Vineet Tyagi is a CTO Biz2 Credit. And Mr. Deepu KV, President and Operations Head with Bajaj Alliance. Session will be moderated by Mr. Amol Bhatt. He's a partner with PwC. The session is a 90 minutes discussion and attendees are requested to send their questions through Q&A box. We will take the questions toward the end of the webinar. Over to you, Amol.
Yeah, thank you, Aarti, for setting the context. Good afternoon, everyone, all the viewers. Hope all of us are audible. And esteemed speakers, panelists, welcome on board. Thanks for taking up this session today. I'm sure it's going to be a very engaging conversation with some of the finest minds in the industry today. But without taking much time, I'm just going to quickly set the context and maybe start with the questions, and then that allows our viewers to also have send in more questions as we go through. So pretty much everyone is aware COVID. I don't know whether it would eventually become a curse word, but as we stand today, we've been locked up back in homes, working from home for over maybe 4.5 months now, and as things stand, pretty much not only just the work, but pretty much everything that we do today has moved to an online platform. I looked at some statistical data, and except for the month of March and a little bit of April, not much dip has been seen in terms of the number of digital payments that continue to happen in India. And if we really look at the dimensions that are changing from a payments perspective, we have mobile POS, we have cardless payments, we have tokenized payments, we have pretty much every possible payments arena available in India today. At the same time, we are investing heavily in terms of various different technologies, including blockchains, IoTs, so on and so forth. So if I really look at it, it's becoming a 3x3 or a 4x4 dimensional payment ecosystem, which essentially means that there are about 16, 18, 20 different combinations possible. And with that, if you add the current COVID situation or the crisis, I think we have a huge problem on hand that essentially needs to be solved very, very quickly and also effectively managed as we go through the next few months and even longer if we don't have an antiviral soon. But with that, we have some of the best minds in the industry who are here today. So I'll start with maybe I'll start with Bharat. And Bharat, you kind of run one of the largest debit card, credit card acquisition business, if I have to say, from an independent non-banking channel perspective. So I'd like to just understand from you what's the real change or what's the adjustment that you are making as FIS, considering that you are in bank equivalent and you pretty much do a major part of a banking ecosystem, especially on the debit card, credit card side.
So thanks, Amol, for setting up context, and let me throw some light. It may not be specific to my organization, but industry at large, because while we all know in current pandemic time, everybody is working very hard, especially in medical and health institute, but at the same time, the great work is done by the RT workforce, because the backbone through which we all are connected today, or our businesses are going for last 4 months. It is a great example of how sustainability of IT has tried, tested, and successfully delivered in last 4 months' time. Because while the transaction number of transaction, the volume, and the TPS, which we call transaction per second, has reduced for sure because of natural reason, but still banks and financial institutions are working. I'm sure that you all will agree that no day bank were shut. No, the bank were working, ATMs were on, net banking was going on. UPI has delivered excellent, number of transaction, 1.3 billion last month. So all this is they're working efficiently. What is great thing which has evolved in last 4 months time, that one, the elasticity of our infrastructure is tested very well, because you know that even in banking or any sector, hardly 2 or 3% people are allowed to work from home, that too only on very emergency basis or remote support to be given for a specific reason. Otherwise 98% people are expected to work at office or at wherever the work location is, and they have to work in that situation. The complete paradigm shift has happened today. If I talk about my organization, we have 65,000 people working worldwide, out of which 97% are working from home. 3% people only are working in offices. So therefore, the IT world has significantly changed. But along with the other corona warriors, the IT people are equally sort of a warrior who has maintained the whole infrastructure up and running. Thankfully, there is no major downtime. There is no internet outage. There is no bank outage. There is no any telecom outage during that period. So therefore, if I have to see collectively, in last 4 months, the IT has delivered well. Coming to the debit card or credit card specific, it's nothing to do with a particular product, but banking in all available channel, banking is running smoothly. Thankfully, there is no outage, but at the same time, there is no security breach as well, because that was one of the big fear in my mind that point of time, that what was there in a shielded room, it is now exposed to the entire world, because maximum people are working from home. Maybe VPN or secure VPN or two-factor and all this is fine, but we were never ever exposed to the internet world or external world in which situation we are today, right? And therefore, I was envisaging that there could be a serious security issue or something may happen. That's what we are immune from that kind of risk, at least till today. So that's my initial remark about on current situation.
Oh, thanks. I think this is very helpful, and more from an industry perspective, I would like to go to Mr. Deepu as well. He's also one of the large, significant insurance entities in India, and I'm sure his experience is also going to be very important in terms of what changes he's seeing from an operations perspective. So, any quick thoughts, Mr. Deepu, from a context setting perspective?
Yeah. Thank you, Amol. It's good to see you covering different industries. As far as the insurance industry is concerned, Amol, we have also replicated work from home, and it's working very well. In fact, we felt the need to keep employees engaged because they were socially and physically distanced. So we said let's keep them emotionally and digitally connected. So we came out with a series of employee engagement programs, and we converted necessity into a virtue. Had we had employee engagement programs in the office, only employees would have been involved. Here we got even families involved, right? So for example, we did a master chef contest on a weekend, and had it been in the office, only employees would have cooked. But here you had somebody's mother, somebody's sister, somebody's wife, various family members pitching in. And on the WhatsApp group, we could see cuisines from all parts of India. So that's how we leveraged it and kept employee morale high. Coming to customers, I covered the employee angle first. Coming to customers, which is what you also touched upon, Amol. You see, we had to virtually migrate overnight to digital assets because call centers, were shut down overnight, right? And typical BCPs involved, city A going down and city B coming up. Here it was a complete national lockdown. So we embarked on a massive, communication blitzkrieg, and we informed customers about all our digital assets available: WhatsApp, chatbot, app, website, so on and so forth. Happy to let you know that the switch was seamless. Today, 80% of our servicing happens through digital servicing, and the best part is that during this period, our grievance ratio came down by a whopping 90%.
Oh wow! I think those are some good things to really hear from you, especially because I think while we talk a lot about the army, the doctors, the nurses, and pretty much and the police force, of course, Mr. Balsingh sir is also here. But I think the bankers also the entire financial sector equally deserves a lot of credit for ensuring that the economy still runs even in a work from home situation. So surely that's a standout. But with that, I'll like to quickly move to Mr. Vinit Tyagi. So, sir, you're also in terms of your business, while you are a digital as a priority setup. But what were your learnings? What were your quick initial thoughts when you kind of switched to a digital only model, especially when the COVID events came into play?
Yeah, I think thank you, and big welcome to all of our viewers, and glad to be a part of this panel, and thank you for exhibition India. I think COVID situation just caught us very rapidly, and one fine day it just caught us with the lockdown. I think there were several things that we had to do, and a few key learnings have already been shared by Deepu and Bharat as well. That going from a workforce which was at times infrequently a very few people working from home, to a workforce which was certainly predominantly working from home was a big shift that we had to manage. From an IT perspective, thankfully we had moved a lot of our IT to the cloud, so the elasticity that we had helped us scale up and down as needed on the element of services which were needed to scale up to support higher work from home. Employee safety was other area that while most of the people were in their homes, we supported that. If they wanted to go back to their native hometowns, we supported that, allowed them to do that, and whatever support we could provide. I think one of the things that the key learning has been for us, we touched upon, is that the engagement that employees had as an organization. When you move to a predominantly 100% work from home, that went missing immediately. So in order to virtually recreate, teams, managers, HR had to get very creative with doing things. I think the other bigger thing that we realized as our customers and operations have gone digital has been that the COVID situation was evolving very rapidly. When we started in March, we thought maybe we'll hit end of April and perhaps situation will be normal. Maybe the summers will set in and situation will be much better. But it's been flexible, and it kind of gone from one deadline to the other. Agility of the business strategy, our systems had to meet that agility. Different things happening. Rapid deployments have to be done. Rapid changes have to be made to support. The IT teams had to step up, and sometimes overnight had to recreate systems which could have taken many months in normal times to be established and made operational and productionized. So I think that's some of the bigger learnings that we've had, and as we are now hunkered down for a longer stint, I think working from home, our focus is to make sure that the agility remains and the scalability that we have built into the infrastructure is fully exercised to support our business.
Oh, thank you so much. And just to for viewers who may have joined 5 minutes late, I think we also have Mr. Balsingh Rajput, who is the Superintendent of Police, and he's also the cyber Cyber Maharashtra owner, project owner at this time. Thanks, sir, for joining in. We just did an introduction just before you came in. I just thought I'll quickly allow people to kind of get introduced. But yeah, from an industry perspective, what I'm hearing is the shift was very fast. The shift required a lot of last-minute technology changes and upgrades. But all and all, what I'm hearing is, and of course, it's the proof of the pudding is we've been able to operate pretty much seamlessly over the last 3.5-4 months. Pretty much demonstrates the agility of the entire financial sector to kind of move to a completely work from home model. And I think as a country, we've shown great resolve in making sure that we exactly do what's required, especially in these challenging times. With that said, I'll kind of move to the next topic, and I'll start maybe with Nitin. And Nitin, with newer technologies, newer setups coming into play, it's as a standard making body, I believe that there would have been a lot of challenges that would have come to your table, and like everyone else here, I'll be quite keen to understand what kind of standards, frameworks, or what kind of early adoption mechanisms are as a standard setting body you are really coming up with, and then we kind of move to the next section.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot. So let me first of all highlight something. Hope everyone would have read yesterday. That India's digital payments volume have actually crossed all channels, which is increased by 46% during the last fiscal year, and with banks somewhere recording around 45.72 billion of transactions. So now you have to see that payments have increased in both in value and volume. And at PCI, has been really been working hard on how we should be providing various type of guidances to the industry in this tough times of COVID-19 also. And for all the viewers here, we have to understand the safety and security of payment ecosystem is as critical, to the continued growth and the adoption of digital payments in India. So the basics, I will, all my fellow panelists here and participants would agree, a strong data security foundation starts with the people, process, and technology. And the PCI DSS as a standards body, provides a foundation of security controls that when implemented and being continuously monitored, offers the best protection for the payment card data. While you are making any kind of a transaction, which is basically, you can call it as whenever you are processing, storing, and/or transmitting cardholder data. And it should be continuously monitored and enforced. The controls should be enforced, which are specified in the PCI DSS. So today, for everyone's interest, I would like to highlight today PCI DSS. In addition to the PCI DSS standard, there are close to 14 other data security standards which gets applied to the different payment life cycle, which is required to improve the card holder data, and which also enable the technology solutions that helps in devaluing the payment data and remove the incentive for criminals to steal it. So we all have to see that as payments and technology are going to involve, PCI SSC also continues to develop new standards and evolve existing standards to meet the need of the global payment card industry and improve security for card-routed payment channels. When I say card-routed payment channels, I'm talking about the mobile payments, I'm talking about IoT payments, where PCI has started working and have been working, and we have come up with the standards which we may talk in a later session, when we talk about it. And one of the standard that we have recently released is on the CPOC standard, which basically focus on which talks about the PCI countless payments on cards standard, which helps in improving security when we are making a payment when making or taking on countless payments on a merchant consumer off the shelf devices, which is such as your smartphone and tablets. So PCI has been really working towards making sure that we come up with the new standards and with this new emerging technologies that we are seeing today.
So no, thanks. I think that's a good summary for the viewers in terms of understanding how you are also kind of making the shift as far as setting the new standards come into play. But with that, I'm going to go back to Bharat for a quick question. Now, having said the context and the changes that have happened over the last 4-5 months, especially work from home, pretty much everybody is not in a physical same location. They're not going to be any physical controls to really protect or kind of account for every resource that comes into an organization to support you. What kind of technology security changes have you seen that are coming through, especially considering that the work from home model is going to go on for a while, and obviously the risks more or less remain the same, or they're going to get heightened, especially in the work from home environment. So what kind of changes did you do or did you strategize as you started into this journey?
I think, one of the important aspects in payment system or banking system, as Nitin rightly said about the data at rest, data in transit, data at store, how well we are securing, that is very, very important. Now, the last 3-4 months situation, and as I mentioned earlier also, that what we are storing in very on lighter side, deep 15 feet, the other data vault, something similar what we were doing, we call cardholder data, the CLC environment. Now the same has exposed to home. Now I was on the board of PCI Council, and we debated last year when we had board meeting, and I mentioned that, okay, look, where world is heading, India is much ahead of that in terms of financial transaction or payment system is concerned, because we are reached to a era of UPI, mobile-based transaction. The rest of the world is inching towards second factor authentication. Of some people are thinking about OTP. Some people are talking about EMV and all this. So we are much ahead. So now, in that time, we have significant obligation towards security, which is kind of universal across the payment system in country and as well as world. But the security challenges come when your entire card holder data environment is extended to your house. In PCI, there is a requirement that you have to have physical, logical security. There are 3 layers of firewall, and all 12 parameters of PCI is mainly focusing on the security. Now, all your security will go for a toss when I am sitting at home. My wife is coming and sitting next to me, and she wants to talk to me while I am working on the cardholder data. Now, there is a breach of confidentiality, there is a breach of security, there is a breach of privacy as well, because privacy is another issue, right? Cardholder data is one, but the privacy is another aspect which is going to put lot of risk, because till the time our privacy law come into effect, we are still immune. But look at the companies those who are working for GDPR. Look at the companies those who are working for California Data. There are so many laws across world, and India's IT service sector is well exposed to those kind of obligations. How are we going to do that? So in a way, the technology has higher obligation, not only from the standard setting body or the practitioner, but technology has to have a radical shift to ensure or give a similar environment what you are doing in control environment in the office or data center. Something same has to be extended seamlessly to your home, which can give a minimum confidence that yes, the security, confidentiality, and the kind of privacy issues are well taken care. So these are the new emerging risks. Of course, I don't see that anybody is ready about having this kind of ready solution, because we see the situation over envisaged where 98% people will work from home. So, but now everybody has adapted the new normal. Time has come, or maybe some people are already working towards that. How we can make a risk-free environment at home as far as business is concerned.
No, I think you brought out very pertinent and important points, especially around what the standard says and how we'll face difficulties in the current situation, especially when we work from home. But with that said, I'd like to quickly move to Mr. Bal Singh sir, especially having seen him work very closely in the past. Also, the kind of trainings that he's kind of made sure that most of the police force in Maharashtra has gone through. I wanted to pick his brain around couple of topics, especially around, sir, what do you think as commoner citizens from an awareness perspective that we should start doing? And because while there's one aspect which is the business, the greater aspect is also about the citizens and the users of these channels, because security is not about what the organization does to protect, but it's also about users and how securely they use and how informed they are in terms of making the right judgment. So with that, I like to call upon you to really help us with some of your thoughts in terms of what's your view in terms of how awareness could be taken to the citizens. How can citizens take more informed technology security as a program?
Yeah.
So sorry, sir, we're not able to see. You're back. You can start.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Hello.
Sorry, at least you're not audible to me. Anyone else from the panelists can confirm that is audible?
No, there are network connection, I guess.
Okay. So you want to just switch off the video for a minute when you start?
I think there are connection problem.
Yeah, I think we have a sir. Maybe we'll come to in a minute.
Is there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like there's a challenge. So Rahul, with that, I think I'll kind of like to come to you first. And do you want to take up some topic, some typical issue in terms of how you kind of help people up the overall awareness agenda within organizations with customers, and then maybe we go back to Mr. Bal Singh sir.
Yeah, sure, Amol. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all the panelists. So, I think from last 4.5 months, as an organization, we have expertise in cyber risk quantification. Now, what that means is, if I ask you how much battery you have in your phone right now, you can quantify that. It's like 70% to 80%. But the traditional problem with the security industry is that if I ask you how secure is your phone, then the answer will be like you are having antivirus in your phone, you're having this security solution, but there is no quantification of knowing what exactly the status of the security after investing what amount. So that is something, the problem statement we used to address. Now, in this entire ecosystem of the problems, we divided it into a PPT, we call it, that is process, people, technology, external, and your configuration. Now, before the pandemic and after the pandemic, the only thing we have seen from our customers is a shift from technology security solution to a human chain strength. So, is a problem from my side, or I'm getting it? Okay, fine. So.
No, I think Bal Singh sir is doing some arrangement, therefore the voice.
Okay, sir. Okay. So So I think that the shift I was talking about, that previously technology was one of the biggest, I can say, the focus point for all the organization to fix is there any challenge or not. But now we have seen from last 4 months, almost 70 to 80% organizations are more worried about the weakest link in the entire ecosystem of cybersecurity, that is human chain. So now with respect to, fortunately, we were working on the same to provide a quantified way of measuring whether the people in your organization are prone from hacking or a vulnerability assessment or not. And I think I remember when we initially was developing the solution, I met Bharat sir for the initial discussion. So I would like to share and thanks to him for the guidance always from last 5 to 6 years. So the good part is that now we have deployed that product to organization, which actually, so if example we have 10,000 people in your organization, you can actually quantify the knowledge base of cybersecurity awareness of an individual. And for a C-suite person, for example, a CISO or a CEO or a board member, you can actually first time see that what is the risk your people are sitting on in terms of awareness. Usually this kind of an awareness training will happen through LMS systems, but this will not lead to a clarity to the board members. And because of the COVID situation, and like Bharat said, this is the first time that now the internal working, or you can say internal technologies, are now facing the internet, which really increase the probability of criminals to attack these systems, individuals as well as the technologies which are there. So awareness is definitely the key, and I think we are pretty much solid in terms of providing these solutions to our clients, and we're getting a fabulous feedback for the same. And again, I always say one thing, that we can patch any technology, but there is no patch of human stupidity. You can only mitigate it. So we have to keep on looking for the solutions which can mitigate that. And I think as of now, from fintech and BFSI is an industry which is already mature from a compliance point of view, and from the level of data they collect in terms of how they store, and they don't need much in terms of technology. But let's take an example of a mobile wallet, for example, from an individual. Today, if a wallet loses money, if an individual loses money from the wallet, he do not know where to go. Now, this kind of awareness, this is the time where each and every organization has to find out the region-wise statistics where these frauds are happening, what is the red area where these are happening in a bigger way. Maybe it's like if you have seen the movie season Jamtara, what is the core region through which these crimes are generating, and what are the victims actually, from which region these victims belongs to, and then centralize, do an awareness campaign on Facebook or social media to aware people on that part. There are a lot of wallets are doing it already. Google Pay is doing from a long time, and other companies are also doing the same thing. So I think awareness is the key for sure. And right now, especially in this pandemic, if we focus more on that, invest more on that, we can really we can control the loss which people are losing in terms of from their hard-earned money. Yeah, thank you. That's from my side.
I think that's a good thing. So
you say about Jamtara. Yeah, so Jamtara part. So I happened to encounter yesterday, and I was surprised. He says, "Sir, we are also doing behavioral analysis." So nowadays we have changed the model, and we do not just go and get a person cheated. We ask that what he is doing, what business he has, what is their income, and accordingly we target the victim. So they're also, though they are sitting on the tree in dense forest, but still they are using AI and behavioral analysis. They become smarter. They are always smart. They become more smarter.
Yeah, so I think they are putting the technologies that we are putting for business for a better use for mining and finding out the fastest way to find the loophole. But with that, I think I'll move on to Mr. Deepu again. And Mr. Deepu, in context of your business pretty much going back work from home, what kind of additional awareness sessions or what kind of internal trainings did you run just to kind of cover the human element, especially from a from a awareness, from a overall compliance perspective. What were the changes that you did to your setup?
Okay. So, Amol, now when you do a mass, replication of work from home, mass replication of work from office, at work from home, the first and foremost thing, like the other panelists were saying, is to basically reinforce the basics to the team, right? Basically tell them that even when you're working from home, all the rules that typically apply, when you're working from office, they are there. The laptop is only for your use, right? The screen should not be seen by anybody else, right? Because obviously you're handling company sensitive data. So basically, reminding them of basics, right? We spent a lot of time on that. That was one. Second, and a very important aspect is cyber security, because obviously there's a difference between firewalls in the office and people working from home. And here, there are two kinds of threats. Typically, organizations focus on threats coming in from the outside. But then when you have people working from home, you also have the threat of information flowing from inside to outside. So there was a very strong focus in terms of communication and training on both, right? People were told repeatedly saying that we do have the ability to monitor every activity, and therefore they need to be extremely careful while carrying out their work. And at the same time, we told them to be very careful in terms of antivirus software installation and various other cyber security measures which we keep educating them on from time to time. So that was from a cyber security point of view. The third thing we did was like I told you that we kept them digitally and emotionally engaged, even as they were physically and socially distanced. One thing which we kept reiterating to everybody is the importance of compliance, the importance of adhering to this basic. I think communication typically tends to be an underrated skill set in these situations. And I think our mantra was that we will not communicate, we will over communicate. Over communicate to the point of where people say, I know about it, don't tell me anymore, right? I mean, you just reinforce it so many times. So I think we focused on these three things. And lastly, what we also did was, Amol, especially in big cities like Delhi and Mumbai, where people save up to 4 hours per day because you could travel 2 hours, one way, home to office and back, right? We did a lot of digital training, right? We trained them on our policies, we trained them on work from home, etiquette, how to use, digital collaboration tools, so on and so forth. So far, at least, happy to let you know that, we haven't had even a single incident.
Sure, and I think some of the points that you touched upon, and we see videos of people on various forums, how they operate their video conference and other capabilities. And I think the point that you made is very, very pertinent, especially to make sure that people are over engaged. You make sure that people have understood and you reconfirm and reaffirm that yes, absolutely, this is the way you work. And I think that's a very nice and a different way to really make it happen. So, Mr. Balsingh, are you back? I can see you. Unfortunately, again, we kind of lost you. Not sure if you are still on. Maybe if you want to come in. Okay, I think we still don't have him. So, Mr. Tyagi, I'll come back to you, Mr. Vineet Tyagi. What's been your experience in terms of employee engagement on the awareness side? Again, as I picked up from the previous conversation, obviously, you also had to do a lot of changes to be 100% work from home. But any quick thoughts, anything different that you did from an awareness perspective?
Yeah. So I think for us, employee engagement and getting them to be safely at work was primary. Data security, compliance, information security. That anyway we had built in. We had invested in building very strong processes for information security, the right tools, even when we were working in office. So transposing them over the work from home scenario was fairly straightforward. But it did present its own kind of challenges, some of them around the data confidentiality, even trivial things like, the office asset or the laptops, which were securely be used for official work only in the, in the office space. When they're at home, sometimes they can get used for other browsing, other types of activities which probably are not as safe if not done through our VPNs and when you're connected to the internet in a non-restricted fashion. So, educating the employees, our information security team ran several awareness campaigns. One of the interesting things that we also did to educate our users, our employees, was that our information security team ran a mock phishing exercise to educate how phishing can actually happen, how enticement, how entrapment, and different kind of techniques can be used. And then we went from there and kind of educated them. So that was another area where we did that. I think that's pretty much it I can share on this topic right now. And definitely, as we come to talking about some of the other cyber security frauds and elements and AI, I can share more thoughts.
No, sure, thanks. Mr. Balsingh, are you in a position to speak now? I can see you kind of logged in.
Amol is facing internet challenges.
Okay. Okay, I think let's.
I think we're able to hear him. He was there. Balsingh sir, can you please speak
sir?
for a moment?
Balsingh sir, can you hear us? I think I need to call him up again, and you can carry on with it. I'll call him up.
Sure. So, while we are on the awareness, and we kind of covered the awareness topic, any quick thoughts on in terms of how you managing the employee endpoint security? Are there any specific controls you set up in terms of checking the usage of how they use their endpoints? Or it's pretty much a trust-based relationship. Any quick thoughts, either Mr. Bharat or Mr. Deepu, you want to cover? Have you kind of added any kind of new components in terms of looking at how employees are using their assets, or it's pretty much a trust-based model that you kind of adopted?
Amol, it's going to be a combination of both, right? I mean, trust obviously, underlies, a lot of activities that you do, because you obviously cannot, culturally or even pragmatically, monitor every single aspect of, what your, employees do. So on the one hand, you drive it through culture, and then, you drive it through communication, you drive it to the orientation of employees, right? Essentially, you appeal to their conscience, then you also bring in a culture of deterrence, in terms of action, in case something really goes wrong. That's from a cultural perspective. Now, secondly, coming to the hard aspect, this was the soft aspect. Coming to the hard aspect, obviously, we've installed tools, which help us, manage it even better, right? In fact, we had basically got all employees to, get the tools installed as quickly as they could, prior to the lockdown. And of course, during the lockdown, some employees could not, and then we, wherever we had the opportunity, when the window opened up, we got them to come to office and then, apply those patches. So it's been a combination of both from our perspective.
Sure. No, I think that's helpful. Moving on, and I'll come to you, Mr. Bharat, now. Especially around AI, ML, the new age technologies. Have you seen a significant impact, or have you seen a significant benefit of using many of these technologies in the current setup? And I'm asking from a more contextual way. Obviously, these are going to help you maybe look at your customers better, or transactions better, or many other aspects from a business perspective. But what are those technologies? What are those basic nitty-gritties that are kind of helping you more from a business perspective? While the number of transactions will continue to grow, obviously there's the offset of making sure that the security of transactions remains constant. So we've talked about the people aspect. But more from a technology aspect, what kind of benefits have you seen from some of these emerging technologies coming to you?
So I think AI and ML is going to play a very, very significant role in coming time. There are a couple of reasons. One, look at from the pure business perspective. Look, when 2010, when we started NPCI in Interconnected World, we used to process only 2 million transactions of a particular. We had only one product at that time. Today, UPI alone has done 1.3 billion last month. There is only one product. So, if take on an average, I think the payment ecosystem is processing almost a 500 million transaction a day. Now, in that case, if any machine, manually or batch processes all this older technologies applied to detect or prevent fraud, it is impossible. It is just eyewash. If someone says that yes, we are capable to do it manually, it is eyewashing. It is nothing. But now we are into the era where a transaction is at the lightning speed. The transaction are going volume and value, volume and speed all are gone exponentially high. In that case, if we rely on manual thing, probably it is not going to help, and therefore AI has lot of role to play. Let's, for example, if I have to talk about how AI can help in fraud detection. So today, this is very, very basic but very pertinent in today's banking industry's case, where we all have a standard behavior to do banking for our own life, right? We be it net banking, be it ATM, be it point of sale, we have certain behavioral aspects are captured in a right way. Like the moment you today come on internet, you are putting so many of digital footprint in this cyber world. So one can definitely create the right amount of data, can create a profile about you, can be used for comparison at later stage. So something similar, like if I am going to withdraw money at the ATM, I don't go at any time, any moment, anywhere, right? I have my own pattern. I go to a particular location, nearest ATM to my building. I go on particular day, maybe Sunday. I go at evening while I go for work. I get only 3,000 rupees for 1 week, and 98% of transaction I am doing with a similar pattern. Now all of a sudden, my bank has my data of last 5 years. I have never visited to a place called Kanpur, right? And one night, 2 o'clock night, somebody my card is used for 20,000 withdrawal, which is not possible. Now my bank data and my profile is compared, then it is giving a red flag that this is a debit in the profile. This is very, very basic in terms of transaction banking. Bank or any institution can use that AI in that way. Now something coming from there to is security. Security has become very, very important nowadays, and therefore traffic is coming from a particular IP address which is never seen. It may be not negative, but some pattern is seen into that. However, we can block the traffic. Somebody is trying to pumping from same geolocation. 10 requests are coming, which was never ever a case. It could be Jamtara. Let's say, for example, if they are coming up with a newer technology and try to do some DDoS sort of activity, then AI and ML can help in that case. And that is what exactly we have designed when UPI. We design UPI security is kept that in mind, that how we can use the maximum such touch points to build a profile which can be used for preventing this kind of risk and security issues. So AI ML are going to be future for any risk and security controls.
Well, thank you so much. I think that gives a very good context to everyone, pretty much how you would be using it in your setup. So Vineet, coming back to you, in a digital-only journey, what's your view on how effectively these solutions have been helpful to you, or how effectively they've been adopted by you to kind of solve very, very tricky problems, if I have to say so, especially around securing the channels?
No, absolutely. I think a few things. There was multiple references to Jamtara. I'm reminded of a quotation from a quote from Will Rogers. Will Rogers maybe about 100 years ago. He was a social commentator, a good newspaper columnist. He said something that too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want and to impress people they don't like. And the key point that I'm reminded here is that too many people spend money they haven't earned. That's the people who are fraudulently able to get money that doesn't belong to them. Having ability to stop that continues to be the biggest thing that we try to focus on. And I think as Bharat pointed out, it is digital transactions and payments, and especially micro payments, are going to be the norm today. It's not going to decrease. If it's at 500 million transactions, it's going to be a billion, and very soon it's going to be 2 and then 10 billion. Especially because the digital transactions are 50 to 100 times cheaper than a banking transaction, which is done in person. The cost keeps coming down every day. To stop frauds, I think we deploy AI and ML solutions to manage 3 or 4 types of risk. There are device-related risks. You're using your phone or your web browser or your laptop to conduct transactions. And most often than not, user behavior, including me, I tend to save my password, and then there's the MFA or OTP that comes on my phone, and that's what I use. But my passwords are still saved in my device. Devices can be stolen, can be lost as well. So there are device-related risks. Now, there are tools that allow us to lock down the devices, wipe out the contents, monitor the usage, even remotely track the IP location where you are accessing. So any change or anomalies when you deploy an AI model, it's very easy to predict or detect anomalies, whether it's change in location, change in behavior patterns. That can be detected through models, and you can immediately shut off the access and do something about it. There are risks associated with enhanced security. Like, for example, you have the OTP, all the strong customer authentication methods which are coming up as a part of PSD2 standard and PCI standards as well. So there, I think in India, I think the notable risk that's coming up because of that is gullible users. Basically, all of us would have heard about situations where people call and say, "You got an OTP, I'm going to pay you." Instead of that, people unaware people can enter that OTP and authorize a payment. They think they're getting money, but they're actually paying money from their account. So those kind of things can be prevented by technology and user behavior analysis as well. But you're not made ever a payment of 10,000 rupees through a payment channel, and if one fine day you are making that, it's more likely a fraud. It's not necessarily a fraud. It's more likely a fraud. So you can decline that transaction or place another dynamic layer of security on top of that. That's something that we have to do. There's something controversial, I think, that's there. So cost of compliance, cost of deploying these tools, cost of AI is there, and especially given the overall economics, sometimes we have to factor in and allow certain frauds to happen, because in order to break down and stop every fraud from happening, the amount of restrictions, capabilities, human interference, oversight, whether it's through AI models, whether it's through tools, which necessarily will be the case, but still, the cost of compliance is going to be so extremely high that there is a point of no return beyond which we cannot, get any benefits by deploying these technologies. Lastly, I would say user awareness is going to be very important. I think NPCI, bodies like NPCI, banks, financial institutions are doing a great job by making user aware. And most of these normal and day-to-day users, they don't understand the technology terminology that perhaps all of us do. Working in the IT field, there are more simpler terms, very different way of working with apps that they work with. So deploying, I think, user awareness and the whole payment industry ecosystem coming together to comprehensively and cohesively educate the user, the mass user base, towards how they can stay protected against frauds which can be perpetuated, is going to be another critical area that we think we will have to keep participating and contributing to. But the industry and the payment industry and the standards body will have to come together.
No, I think thank you so much for your reviews. I think I fully concur with two key points that I picked up. One is there's a cost to everything, and obviously there's a trade-off that will anyways kick in at some point in time. But the other thing that you talked about was clearly customer or user awareness. And with that point, again, I see Mr. Balsingh is joined in now, so I'll kind of quickly go back to him and like to hear from him. For everyone's benefit, he's kind of run a large program not only for citizens but also his entire police force in terms of training, uplifting the knowledge, making sure people understand the technology risks. But we will like to really hear from him. What's the government's views? What are his views in terms of how he sees awareness evolve, move forward? Yes, sir.
Yeah, am I audible? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we lose him again?
Yes, we did. He has also logged in from his mobile. So let's see if this work out.
Yeah, seems like we've not able to hear him. So coming back to Mr. Deepu, what's your view on what are those technologies that have really helped you in this situation over the last 2 to 3 months?
Amol, in fact, I was, going to proactively answer this question earlier also when you asked, the others. See, as I said, when we had to move from the call centers to digital assets overnight, we deployed a range of technologies. So, Amol, if you look at our bot, while virtually everybody uses bots, I'll tell you where we differentiated ourselves. One is, in India, English tends to be the, default, mode of language when it comes to digital servicing. So we offer our services in languages other than English as well, to cater to a diverse set of customers. The other is, if you look at a lot of bots, they are trained for straightforward processes. You ask a standard query, the bot follows an SOP, gives you a response. And it will sometimes tell you saying that, I'm sorry, I'm not able to understand your question. So can you please call up the call center or can you please go to the website? What we did, we deployed NLP and AI to ensure that, the bot understands, the customer's queries. And at the back end, wherever possible, we had assisted automation in the sense that a human being helps. Now, the customer does not see any break in service because he's continuing to, get, service from the bot. And over a period of time, the ratio of questions answered by the bot to the ratio of, questions answered with assisted help from human beings, that ratio has improved over time. The third is, Amol, if you look at COVID-19, people became very wary of touch, right? Because nobody wants to, even touch the button of an elevator, right? So what we had done was, we had basically, integrated, with Alexa as well as, Google Assistant. We were the first ones to integrate with them when they launched in India. So that extent, people could also, use voice, without having to, use, their touch screens, right? They could just bark their command into the phone, and then, get the order executed. So I think, that way, we, leveraged, AI and NLP, to basically make a difference to our customers. The other thing which we did, Amol, was, for example, when you look at health insurance, right? Because insurance, is an essential service, and especially health insurance, because the lockdown is on activity. The lockdown is not on falling in or going to wanting to go to the doctor, right? So what we did, where patients could not, go to diagnostic centers or even doctors could not make home visits, we offered two services. On our app, we offered a doctor on chat and a doctor on video feature. Any user could just log in, and take medical advice. And then all they have to do is, go to a medical store and buy medicine, which anyway, medical stores were anyway open. The other is, where we launched telemedicine, right? Because people can't get their diagnostics done because physically they can't travel. So we had we launched this facility, what we called telemedical underwriting, whereby, doctors would, examine the patients over video and then give their assessment, right? So this way, work was not hampered, it continued smoothly, even during the lockdown. So these were, some technologies, which we use, to make life, very, very, effective for our customers.
So the tagline can be, we save lives just by voice, knowing that you integrated with Alexa. But that's a very cool use case to do. So interesting to know these. So Nitin, I'm kind of going to come back to you, and I know Deepu's now put you in a spot. He's doing pretty much everything online, IoT enabled, maybe even a 3D secure page would be tomorrow automated by his bot to say that please read the characters and we'll go forward. So with these type of challenges, obviously as a standard setting body, again coming back to you, how do you kind of respond to such innovative minds that work to really make full use of AI ML as we move forward?
Yes. Let me set a background before I start talking about the important word that is 3DS standard that you talked about. See, cybercrime today is a business, and criminals are just looking for something valuable. They can turn it to use to commit a fraud and incentivize, and they look for incentives where they can find incentives and basically try to get the money out. So EMV, when you talk about the cards, specifically, we have EMV chip, which is one of the methods, which is one of the excellent method to minimize the risks and fraud in a face-to-face environment. At PCI, what we have seen in various countries where EMV chip has been implemented, there has been a significant decrease in frauds at the point of sale, when it comes to but we all know that when we see these kind of technologies and these kind of the standards which we are coming and trying to adopt, and they move towards the new technologies, and here we are talking about the card not present space. It opens a Pandora box, and the criminals are again here looking for some kind of an incentive online, right? And that's where the dynamic authentication technology comes into the picture, which can help in improving the authentication for the e-commerce and the m-commerce environments. And one such example is 3D Secure, which will help in preventing unauthorized card not present transactions and protect the merchants from the exposure to the CNP frauds. So PCI has actually worked with EMVCo to develop the two PCI data security standards, which supports the secure implementation of EMVCo 3D Secure 3DS protocols, and which actually enhance the security of 3DS infrastructure and transactions and improve the dynamic authentication for both e-commerce and m-commerce. So now here the interesting thing that you all have to understand is that individual payment brands here determines whether an organization today is required to undergo an assessment against the PCI 3DS core standard or PCI DSS 3DS SDK standard, and in case there is some confusion for these entities who should go for it, they should contact to the payment brands directly to get more information on this particular compliance programs. So you have to see that as we grow, as the technology grows, the cyber criminals are also finding different ways to cash this or incentivize these modes to make frauds. So that's where the PCI 3DS has been working on, and I think that's where we have been working on new standards which starts focusing on the contactless payments. When the world is moving towards a contactless payments, and I think we have been seeing a lot of research which has been happening. We have been seeing a lot of stats around, and people are here adopting these payment modes, and which is in the and a kind of a COVID-19, it's still me, I've started using contactless, where I am little worried, whether when I go to an ATM to withdraw a cash, or when I pay for my groceries, the guy who is coming and delivering some goods to me, I make sure that I either pay in advance or probably I use my contactless, mode of payments to make sure that I am been least affected if there are viruses on the devices. But at the same time, at PCI Security Standard Council has been really working hard with the industry stakeholders globally to make sure we have the guidance around even protecting these terminals, the POS terminals and devices from these kind of viruses or the kind of things which are happening that we have been hearing around. You can get these COVID virus, on the cards or on the fingers, and then probably if you have some kind of you touch your mouth or finger or nose, you can get it. So we have come out with this guidance how best the providers can use the terminals to sanitize and help the users to use them safely. And these guidance have been completely on our PCI Security Standards website and can be downloaded freely for anyone's use.
I think that's very helpful information. I'm sure people will find it useful. Both from an understanding as well as from a usage perspective. So coming back to you, Rahul, any quick thoughts? You are a success story from a Indian startup security setup perspective. Any quick thoughts in terms of what could customers be doing? More so from a protection, more so from addressing the new age risks in the changing both COVID as well as digital only.
Sure, Anmol. So I think as I told you before, we have more than 200 customers globally, and we pretty much expanded in US, Singapore, and Dubai, and so on and so forth. The shift, as I again told you, that we have seen from technology investments, securing the technology's assets to a human chain is significant, and we can expect more advancement in that also. So as an organization, we are now pretty much focused in delivering the same thing. Now, I think for B2C market, what we are going to do is something we are going to make it absolutely free. So I don't want to compare it, but yeah, it's kind of, you can expect like the Byju's of cybersecurity. But I'll give an example. For example, if I ask any viewer who is watching it, are they trained to use a smartphone? Are they certified smartphone users? They are not, right? Nobody has given us a formal training to use a smartphone. Now, India is standing on more than 151 million smartphones devices in their hands, and how many people are pretty much know how to use it properly in terms of security. And these are the devices through which you are going to make the payments, you're going to serve whatever you want, and then proceed with the things. Now, criminals obviously know this thing and how they're evolving the interaction through social media and doing a fraud. Like, for example, there's one of my relative, actually, he falls into a scam, and he was into a remote area and his phone was not working. Someone hacked into his Facebook, sent a message to all friends that I am stuck here. Please send some money on through this wallet to this number, and please help me. My phone is not with me, so and so forth. People tried calling, his phone is not working, and they actually transferred the money. They thought that they're chatting with the same person. Now, because from working from home and investing more time on social media and interacting with other things, these mediums are being now targeted by the criminals. And again, I'm telling that we have more than like 100 cyber awareness modules, from how to use WhatsApp securely, how to use Instagram, Snapchat. Now, think from a teenager's point of view, think about from our parents' point of view. Now, this will be in Hindi and English both, and if my father knows, okay, I'll give an example of, I think, Bharat sir, I told the same problem to Bharat sir when we were making the product. I'm taking input from him also. So my dad, I told him that we showed him a video, like, okay, this is the video, it will tell you how to protect your account from a criminal, just enable two-step verification. Then my dad asked, okay, I know what is two-step verification, but in this application, where to click that? Now, then I realized that traditionally all the learning materials or the videos, they're designed to give you the knowledge about that this can happen and this you should do. But how to do was a very big miss. So we concentrated on that part. Bharat sir gave the same advice to us, because again from Bheem to all the NPCI and previously, and then FS right now his organization. So with respect to his experience and all the veterans we have taken in account, we came to a point that the roots are the main problem, not the technology. Technology, obviously, it's pretty much matured. Everything is designed in a very, very good, robust manner. And if you see from last 5 years, how many times you have seen a payment gateway being compromised by criminals, or maybe a very huge hit happen on any mobile wallet from a technology attack, you very, very rarely, I haven't seen before. But majority of the money we are losing from the customers because of lack of awareness. And I think this is something which we are trying to do, and which will really revolutionize the industry in a big way. And when it's out, I would like to share with you also to take your feedback on the same. So that we are expecting in August, and I would love everyone can download it from Play Store and from App Store free of cost. And again, for industries, for enterprises, this is the first time when they have a very, very crystal view, quantified view on their people's awareness level, which they can actually show to the board members and the stakeholders that how much vulnerable or how much secure they are in terms of the awareness, which includes obviously phishing campaign, UABA behavior, and then their understanding of each and every module and the score out of it. So we combine so many 5 to 6 parameters of that and give one score to the organization to really quantify how secure their people are and how strong is the human chain in their organization to prevent any happening. So it's more over industry, the way industry is moving from reactive to proactive. We are trying to move towards the predictive methodologies with again AML into the product. So we can predict and tell you the really quantified manner that where to put your money with respect to a dollar value return and secure the organization in all parameters like process, people, technology, and external factors also like deep and dark web scan. Yeah.
No, I think this is very useful, and all the best. I'm sure if you create a Baiju on the learning side of cyber, I'm sure a lot of customers will be saved. But I also have a flip side that there are a lot more criminals that we are going to create.
Not actually, because we are showing only how to secure it.
Okay, fair. That's on the lighter side. I just thought, but it's a great story. I think we'll certainly all the best, and we'll certainly like to see that. I'm just conscious of the time. There's some questions that have come, and maybe some of the panelists are the best people to address. And the first one, Bharat, I'll come to you again. There's a question on how UPI works and how secure and how it's secure. Now, no better person than to answer that than you. You've been on the hot seat in the entire adoption and rollout. So maybe if you can take just a couple of minutes and just voice it out, that will be useful for many of the participants.
So it's very, very difficult to just explain how UPI work, but in very few words, I can say that the way you trust while you created your email ID with gmail.com or yahoo.com, that is something which, Rahul is talking about the Baiju of cyber. We are inspiring so many such Baijus to create something similar short of UPI across the world. So that's the UPI where you just like your name at the rate of gmail.com. That is what we have given your personal address or financial address to your identity, linking with all the banking system and banking institution. But a lot of material is available on net. You can go and see for more detail on UPI. But I can tell you one thing very, very confidently with a lot of responsibility, that how UPI is secure. So let me tell you the fact that UPI is significantly secure, significantly compared to any other payment system anywhere in the world. Secondly, there is no single fraud. There is no single fraud. In the time I was heading that function in NPCI, even after that, there is no single fraud has happened exploiting loophole in UPI system. Period. All fraud. again I'm repeating, all fraud which has happened using UPI, unlike card or any other thing where customer is not even aware the card got cloned, UPI customer involvement is 100%. In every fraud happen on UPI, because customer has even allowed someone to install quick TeamViewer on his mobile, AnyDesk on his mobile. Customer has given OTP, customer has given card number, customer has forwarded SMS to the PSP to register UPI, and after all the authentication, he has accepted the collect request coming from fraudster. So in any of the fraud, customer has full involvement, knowingly or unknowingly. Now, why to blame only UPI for this? If that's the case, your net banking, if you give username and password to somebody and OTP, which technology is there in the world which can protect you? So there is no rational comparison between UPI and any other system per se, but I can again with a lot of pride and responsibility I can say there is absolutely zero fraud because of system lacuna or system shortcuts or loophole in UPI. All frauds has happened if customer awareness is elevated, customers are imparted with very detailed education, which I generally talk about digital literacy. Definitely the number of fraud will reduce. And last, as I was speaking to one fraudster who is my informer from Jamtara, he said, "Sir, आप लोगों ने तो पूरा बैंड बजा दिया, अभी हम fraud नहीं कर पा रहे." He confirmed. I can play audio in next event. He confirmed it. Only we can do, we can ask somebody on the name of KYC and all, and they allow us to install TeamViewer. And once TeamViewer is installed or AnyDesk installed, then we can make a fraud. So that is, again, why only with the fraud? If you allow somebody to access your mobile remotely, anything and everything, your photograph, your password, everything can go. So collateral damage is too huge, not only financial.
Oh, thank you. I think that you set the context, and I know Rahul, you want to come in, but I'll just hold you because there's another follow-on question that's coming through. But I'll just quickly go to one question on PCI. So Nitin, question, is PCI applicable to debit when you mean hands and everything sitting back at home? So quick one on that, and then I want to move to Rahul.
Amol, I lost you there. Your voice was a little breaking on your questions. If you can repeat it, that would be great.
Okay, so question is PCI applicable to both debit cards and credit cards, or it's just applicable to debit cards?
No, I think it is applicable to both credit and debit cards. So any card which is having a card brand logo, which is Visa, Mastercard, Amex, JCB, or Discover, or in the case in India we call it RuPay, though it is not a part of a founding member of the council. But yes, definitely any card which has a payment brand logo would have to undergo the PCI. PCI is applicable to the one who are storing, processing, and or transmitting cardholder data.
Sure. No, thanks. That's helpful. And there's one more follow-on question on that. How can QSs remotely ensure that controls are implemented in the DCDR and cloud? Basically, the question I think stems from the fact that you may not be able to come on-prem and scan a lot of systems in the current situation. So, is there a way out? Is there a mechanism that you suggest people could?
Yes, I think. See, I'm not sure who has asked this question, but whoever has been putting across this question, they should actually go through a guidance document that has been published by PCI Council for the QSs doing remote assessments, and that actually would definitely help them in getting an idea of how the assessments has to be conducted when you are working remotely, or probably doing assessments remotely. Both the ways they can get a clarity on the guidance that we have published. In case they have any concerns If you are a company who is getting audited by a PCI QSA, then you should definitely get clarity from your respective payment brand or the regional regulator to find out more on the same, so that you can consider having QSA doing those audits remotely.
Thank you so much. So Rahul, I'll come back to you. I think you also wanted to comment on the UPI in terms of what work you've done. But there's also a panel question that's come, which is how should individuals or customers protect their data? And if you have a Byju module on that, if they can refer to.
They can, I guess. So soon you can follow our Twitter, and definitely again we'll tell you, and you can also help others to get to the right platform. So I think the every application, I think, especially being an Indian, I can say I'm from that generation जब हमारे software होते थे, and we used to, whenever we want to install it, we used to click next, finish, right? I think that is the same mentality we are now taking forward in terms of their applications today. But the only difference between that time and today is that time money was not involved into our daily actions and these kind of applications. Now the money is involved. So when you do these kind of things without knowing about the technology, it will land you in trouble, not only for the money, but for the personal problem also. So my request for everyone is, whenever you're using Instagram, whenever you're using WhatsApp, whenever you're using Facebook, just go to the setting and see what are the security features they have given to you. Now, how many people have gone to the settings of any wallet or Paytm or whatever and see how many features on security they have given, and whether it is enabled or not. So the investment of time in terms of using that technology and knowing the features, at least you can use that to really protect yourself. So that is my advice to them. Now coming back to the UPI, like Bharat has said, so I think being an organization, we audited almost the 60% of the UPI based application in India, and I can say that it is world's one of the most robust, secure architects or unhackable system. As of now, we haven't seen anything, and as a citizen, I think we should be proud of that. And I use UPI thoroughly. I use Bheem for sure for all my payments, and it's one of the great contribution to the nation. And the level of security, usually every application is having 2 layers of security. Bheem is having a 3 layer of security, from the MAC bindings to the app password to the transactional password. So these 3 things, if I have to rank the application in terms of security, Bheem plus UPI is the number 1 for me as a hacker, or you can say security professional. And I encourage everyone also to do the same without any double hesitation. So that's my final verdict from my side.
No, thank you so much. I think we are almost about time, but I know Mr. Deepu, and if you have some closing thoughts, and I'll just quickly go through the panelists as we close. So I think if you could start, and then we go around the rest of them and pretty much come to a close.
Yeah. See, Amol, I think one is, to the point that Rahul and made and the others also made, I think India has made, significant strides. We were one of the earliest in the world, to basically get into chip and pin and also offer, 2-factor authentication. So that way, I think, we have been, very, very progressive, from a security perspective. Secondly, I think the awareness levels in India now, are far higher than what they used to be earlier. A lot of people are on the internet nowadays. There was a report by IAMAI a few days back saying that the number of internet users in rural India has exceeded the number of users in urban India for the first time. So, that way, I think, the awareness is very, very high. I think the point, one of the panelists made on, people being a little lax about sharing OTP. If you see, I think that has been, one of the key factors, in crime. So I think people just need to be, very, very wary, because sometimes, we just need to trust, even strangers, they just need to be very, very careful about that. So I think if you look at these 3-4 factors, the government has done its bit, financial institutions are doing their bit. I think if people, at their end, if they can take their awareness into, 100% execution at their end, I think we'll be far safer.
So, Vineet, any quick thoughts, any closing comments?
Yeah, definitely. I think UPI is a game changer. I think digital payments, is a game changer for the economy, for India going digital per se. And I think with telecom, what we did, we were way behind. But with telecom, with the mobile revolution, we leapfrogged a generation, and we, went to a very huge degree of penetration. I think the same is with digital payments. I think most of our population never would see a debit or a credit card, but they have straight away migrated to using mobile payments, micro payments. I think we are at a cusp of very phenomenal things. The digital transformation that the government is planning. There will be security aspects. I think users have to be made aware. Users will learn, and I think as the whole ecosystem, the tools and technologies are evolving, we will also have to consciously make effort to keep plugging the holes as we find. And in the end, I would say that security can never be 100%. It's a cat and mouse game. When we deploy a solution to secure something, the people who are out there with malicious intents find a way to get around it or over it or hack through it. So it will always be an ongoing game, and I think as industry, we'll always have to stay ahead of that curve and make sure that all these things stay secure. Thanks.
No, I think you made a very, very important point in terms of how we've adopted it so quickly, and we've kind of leapfrogged from a non-online to a purely online mobile-based economy, and that's hats off to everyone who's kind of been part of this larger journey. But with that, I think we've clearly out of time. But Bharat, any quick closing thoughts, and then we'll kind of close.
Yeah, so I agree with what Dipu and Vineet, Rahul, Nitin all said about the kind of challenges what we are facing and will continue to face from security and fraud and all this part. But one important aspect which we are forgetting, so I thought let me touch upon as my closing remark. And my decade-long experience managing fraud at NPCI, I have realized one thing, that in our country, this is very interesting data. In our country, 80% of frauds, I'm talking about customer facing fraud, are happening out of greed, and 15% are happening out of threat. 5% are happening because of genuine technical flaw which customer is not aware and that got exploited. So that this is not only going to be solved with the technology. We need to change the mindset. Because of greed, someone is saying you are going to get 5,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees in your account. There is no free lunch. That's what we need to say. So that behavioral aspect or tendency or a mentality of people, unless it is changed, fraud will continue to happen. Come what may, however good controls you bring. So what? There is multi-fold approach. One, definitely the robust technology and architecture making foolproof security for the application or system. Second, a continuous digital literacy for customers. And the third is you have to continuously monitor the behavioral aspect of customer. Then only at over period of time you can change that mindset and people do not fall prey into fraudsters' game. So this is all collective effort which will make the ecosystem risk-free.
Bharat sir, sorry and more. Bharat sir, I think I think it will be great if you can add. If you remember when we met you taught me one thing. Ki Rahul, agar 100% crimes are happening in India, frauds are happening, what is the percentage of that 100% divided? Can you share with everyone? I think that was a great input actually.
Yeah, that's what I said. So 85% fraud, 70% fraud are happening pure out of greed. 75%. The 15% are happening out of a threat where someone is saying, I'm going to block your card, I'm going to block your account, I'm going to block your Paytm wallet. And if you do not give this information or maybe OTP or your KYC document, the last 5% are really genuine technical loophole which fraudster by mistake reveal or figure it out and they commit a fraud. Large breach like what happened in Cosmos or Hitachi or in Bank of Maharashtra and so many other places which I am aware about, are pure lacuna or a flaw in the system which they got products exploited. But 95% is definitely because of a human behavior and not to do with the technology.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. It was quite an engaging session. At least I've kind of picked up some good thoughts, including some of the AI ML learnings, integration of Alexa for Save My Life, and of course Baiju in the making on the security training. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. It was extremely great session. And over to you, back to you, Aarti. Thank you so much.